It's 4 o'clock, we'll get the work session started. First thing on the agenda is Power On Midwest. Welcome.
Review the mouse and you are in PowerPoint presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ron Pritchard with ITC Midwest, representing the Power Midwest project. And last October, Derek Johnson from Great River Energy joined me. We introduced the Power Midwest project to you, and we told you at that time we'd be coming back with updates. We're kind of making the rounds through the county commissions along the project route over the last week or so, and this week and next week, to keep everybody informed. I'm joined by my counterpart at Great River Energy Communications, Heather Reinhardt, and she's going to start the presentation today. And we do have some routes to share with you today as well. So, Heather, please proceed.
Well, thanks for having us here today, and we'll just jump right in. So this project is a project that's being put together by 4 different utilities. Great River Energy is one of them, along with ITC Midwest, who Rod works for, and Excel Energy. And then helping on the South Dakota portion is Otter Tail Power Company. And just a quick overview, Power On Midwest is a series of transmission projects that are being proposed that will significantly increase the electric carrying potential in Minnesota. It'll bring the power into and out of Minnesota. It starts in South Dakota, goes through the whole southern part of the state, and continues on into both Wisconsin and Iowa. Power Midwest is helping with reliability throughout the area. We know that power in this area is, or the need for power is going to significantly increase in the next coming decades. We've done lots of studies on that, and we feel that this is the answer to solve the problem. Some of the project benefits, we talked about these the last time we were here, so I'll kind of go through them quickly. Continued electric reliability for sure is a top benefit. Also access to new generation, because as you may have heard in news, coal plants are being retired. That's kind of a requirement of the state. And so we need to replace those with something else. And those need to get connected onto the electric grid to get that power from wherever it's produced to where it's needed. We also have customer and economic benefits, and it gives us the ability to prepare the grid for future growth. That we have good electricity now, but more growth is needed, is coming in the area. We need to help get that where it's needed the most. Continued electric reliability, we've just talked about this. So electric demand is growing. There's more power coming online from wind and solar and new power generation sources that we may not have even discovered yet. As those coal plants retire, we need to get that access to the lowest cost available electricity at any given time of day. Electric grid will enable new technologies and support other technologies that also reduce emissions. Some of the economic benefits include improving reliability compared to other more expensive solutions that we've looked at. This line will also help our local communities grow and the region grow, because we can get the power needed when new manufacturing comes online, new homes are built in the area, that sort of thing. Hot off the presses, today we released our economic impact report that was, we contracted with Strategic Economic Research LLC. They're just a company that does these sorts of reports, and they found several benefits to this project. Economic activity, there's lots of tax revenue, new jobs that are being created, labor through the payroll of the people working on the project. The report was finalized just today. It's been posted on poweronmidwest.com. The full report is there, as well as a summary, and that we'll be going public with that tomorrow, so it's definitely new information. Just some of the highlights of the report is that we're seeing $2 billion in economic impacts to the state of Minnesota during the construction phase of this project. So that'd be, lots of jobs, people coming into the community to do the work, are also eating in your communities and that sort of thing. We also are expecting $92 million per year, looking out for 35 years as a long-term benefit to the state of Minnesota. And that'll, be broken down by the counties that the lines are in. So if you want to see the full report, poweronmidwest.com. Other project benefits is that's preparing our grid for future growth. Talked about that a little bit already. And it also gives us access to new generation. So, the way that we're generating power is changing. People are turning more to the wind and solar, as you know, and the coal plants are continuing to be retired. So what we're seeing more of is the,
You keep saying that, and yet I hear in other states, they're advancing coal plants.
Minnesota has a carbon-free law.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but there's potential that some of that stuff could be changed,
You're right,
Yeah.
it could be.
so.
Yep,
I think as utilities, we are taking a long-term look, and the general trend is away from carbon-fired generation toward more cleaner energy resources. I think frankly, under the current administration, there's more emphasis on coal, but I think as utilities, we're looking at long-term, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, what is this generation mix gonna look like? I know in our system, for example, and I'm speaking just for ITC Midwest, and I'm not remembering the exact numbers, but say, 10 years ago, we were probably 50 or 55% coal on our system that we carry. And our company does not own any generation, so we're energy agnostic. We just, our role is to carry what's being produced. And now it's about 55% renewables and coal's down to about 20 or 25%, something like that. And so that's the shift that we're seeing. So as utilities that supply transmission services, we're required to interconnect with the generation that's being, that's out there in production.
and this line would be needed it carries electricity regardless of where it comes from, whether it's wind or whether it's coal. This just is like the freeway that gets it to where it needs to be. So that helps answer your question. Thank you. So just a little, this map shows kind of all the projects that were proposed by the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, shortened to MISO, is kind of the overseer of the electric grid throughout the Midwest region here. Which is shown on the map, and our project is kind of the little highlighted one in the southern part of the state. But this project will connect with all of these other projects, which is what they have determined to be needed to keep energy flowing in the next decades. You know, much like when the original electric system was created decades ago, now it's just kind of time for that upgrade. So the major component of this line will be a 765 kilovolt line, and that was determined to be the most efficient one for several reasons. It very efficiently carries power over long distances as we're trying to cross the whole southern part of the state. There'll be fewer lines needed than the more common 345 kilovolt lines, which you can see in the graphic. The 765 ones would be in the middle, and that's the land impact that they would have, and they carry a similar amount of power as the graphics on either side, which would take up a lot more land and more impacts to the environment, that type of thing. And then the infrastructure that we're using is very resilient to weather in Minnesota. Obviously, we have very cold days and very hot days and lots of wind, so it's not going anywhere. We're building it to meet any weather impacts that there might be. This is what we are proposing for the structure. So it will be approximately 150 to 175 feet tall to the very top of it, and the top widest part would be about 145 feet. The span between each one is 1,200 to 1,400 feet, so about 5 structures every mile. And the footprint of it, the part that touches the ground, will kind of have 4 legs, and that will be anywhere from 35 by 35 feet total to 50 by 50 feet total. And the right-of-way that we are expecting will be 250 feet total, so 125 feet on each side of the section. And then I'm gonna turn it over to Rod, who will tell you a little more about the rest of the permitting process.
Mr. Chair, I have a question before we
Sure, go
move
ahead.
forward. So you were talking about hot off the press, this economic impact report. You're talking about tax revenues at county and state level. Does the report drill down on what we can expect in Steele County? Or is it just an all encompassing.
We'll get to this in a few minutes, but, currently, and this is an important part of the story here, the very southern edge of Steele County is still in the notification corridor, but as the three major routes have been developed across southern Minnesota, there's no route in Steele County at this time. So, I would anticipate you still have some economic benefits of the line, of course, because the line has widespread economic benefits, but you wouldn't have the tax revenue benefits unless something changes and you would get the line through part of the county. We anticipate that economic benefit, or that tax revenue benefit to be in the range of approximately $30,000 per month per year for the counties that.
That last touch. All right, fair enough. Thank you. Yes.
All right. We talked about this last fall when we were here too, and so basically in the state of Minnesota, there's 2 permits required for us to be able to build a project, 2 approvals needed. One is a certificate of need, which is really what it says. Is the project needed? Did MISO propose the right project for Minnesota and the surrounding states as far as how this is put together? Are these, what does the growth look like? Heather mentioned the growth that's anticipated to take place. It's projected that energy consumption, electricity consumption is going to grow by 25% over the next 2 decades in Minnesota. And we're coming out of a time period when electricity demand throughout the upper Midwest has been relatively flat, and so this does represent quite a change. And so that process kind of, it's been worked on for the last year, but a key milestone was in February when we submitted it. It's like a 400-page document, certificate of need, with the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission in February. Since that time, and recently, there's been a public environmental scoping meeting on the certificate of need that was held throughout the notification corridor, and where the public had offered comments on the certificate of need. So that's typically about a year-long process for the PUC to decide whether or not to approve the certificate of need. And then the second thing, which obviously is of most interest to landowners and commissioners, is what are the routes of the project? What does the route of the project look like? And so we'll talk about that as we go. But we anticipate filing our route permit with the PUC in February or early next year. And then, that takes a year or 2 to go through that process to get final approvals as well. And so, as mentioned, we had public information meetings were held the last couple of weeks of April on the certificate of need. We had good participation in that, particularly in the eastern part of the project notification corridor by the public. And then we anticipate public hearings coming up on the project. As far as the certificate of need, public hearings will come up in the 4th quarter of this year. So the thing that next phase of the route development process is we had public engagement meetings going back to last November where we introduced the project across the notification corridor, and we've had the certificate of need meetings. Now we're going to introduce routes to the public for the first time. They are on the website, they're in your packet here. We'll introduce those at these meetings coming up the first 2 weeks of June. So we'll have the locations of those to show you in just a minute. As we mentioned, we anticipate doing that filing in early 27, and a decision from the PUC on the route probably mid-2028 sometime. So this is just kind of a graphic that highlights some of the points that I made about what the schedule is. We did the CONSCOPing meetings in April. We've got the first round of these routing open houses in the first 2 weeks of June. The next round we're currently anticipating on the calendar is actually being the first 2 weeks of August. Those meetings we continue to kind of fine-tune the routing proposals, and then at the end of the day, what we need to submit to the PUC next February is one route for the entire project across southern Minnesota. That's what the PUC requires, so obviously that's what we'll submit. So then we have additional public hearings and continue to work through the regulatory process. So this is a good graphic that kind of, I think of it as being kind of a funnel process. You start out with a really big notification corridor, and it covers a wide area of southern Minnesota. We have, there's 47,000 on our mailing list for the notification corridor in southern Minnesota. To give you an idea of how many landowners have been notified about these meetings and that we're keeping informed about the process. Route corridors identified, we keep narrowing the scope. It becomes preliminary routes, becomes a proposed route, and then finally the PUC determines the route in finality. They can, and in our experience has been, they will make adjustments to the route based on public input, based on things that they're seeing from their studies. But it's our responsibility to identify one proposed route. Some of the things that the PUC requires, and some of this is by statute, is that we take a hard look at existing road corridors. There are opportunities there. Are there opportunities in existing utility corridors? And also, it's important as much as we can to follow existing divisions of lines, whether that be through farm fields or whether that be township lines, whatever that might be. And so, lots of analysis goes into it. Our teams from our companies have done, this question has come up at some of the public meetings, is this just a tabletop exercise that somebody's sitting in the back room and doing on a computer? That's part of it, but our teams have driven, I believe, having more than 4,000 miles crisscrossing southern Minnesota, taking a look at all these routes that we propose. They will obviously spot things that are helpful by making those visits, and so that's the way that it's going to go. This map shows where our meeting locations are over the next couple of weeks here. And I'm gonna go to the second slide because that's obviously your area here. So your closest meetings would be in Casson. There's actually 2 meetings, one at 10 a.m. and one at 4 p.m. on June 11th. But obviously you or anybody in the public is welcome to attend any of these meetings. And they're all identical. There'll be an open house format, there's a formal presentation where landowners will come in, they can see posters about the project, which have information that are very similar to this presentation and even goes beyond that. And then they'll be able to go to what we call a mapping station, where we'll have several GIS experts there who can talk to them about their particular land, see if there's anything that we're not aware of in terms of our studies. For example, we've heard of things, and I'm familiar with this, like a small cemetery or wetlands that we don't know about, or something like that that might impact the proposed route. And so we're seeking all that information. It all goes in the database, and that helps us refine these routes further as we get to the next set of meetings in August, and then ultimately the final route proposal from PUC next February. So we'll now go to the route corridors, and this is all also on our website, as Heather noted, poweronmidwest.com. And actually, there's a feature on the website that you can zoom in, zoom these maps in to whatever you want to see at a certain level, so that's very helpful. So again, we've got these different project segments. Obviously, the one that you're most concerned about is the one from Lakefield Junction Substation near Lakefield to the Pleasant Valley Substation, which is located southwest of Rochester. And as we're seeing there, as I mentioned earlier, there's a little corridor of a little bit of the project corridor, notification corridor is in Steele County, but currently the line is not in Steele County. Now, it's possible that it could still be routed part of the line could be routed in Steele County based on continuing input, continuing information, but at the moment, these are what we're proposing. And there's 3 segments, you can obviously see this, a north segment, a central segment, and a southern segment. The central segment really follows Interstate 90 pretty closely. At a hearing on the project, or meeting about the project at the PUC in April, the PUC required us to submit a route that follows Interstate 90 as closely as we can. Now, there are some challenges with that because, for example, our companies currently have some 345 kV lines along portions of Interstate 90. There's also issues of building the line around communities around Interstate 90. If you think about Albert Lee, what would that look like? And I think there's route segments here, proposals, for example, that would go both north and south of Albert Lee. And so, but that is something that the commission is interested in. There was legislation passed years ago in the legislature. In fact, the Iowa legislature passed essentially the same legislation this year that really requires us and the PUC to take a hard look at those route corridors, particularly major route corridors like I-90. So those discussions are continuing. So, but this is how the route segments are valued out at this time, and this is the information that will be taken into the public open houses next week. So as indicated, whoops, let me back up there, there we go. So as indicated, looks like we're fairly close to the southern border of Steele County, but not in Steele County at this point. But we always want to caution everybody, especially landowners, just because that route is not in your area, doesn't mean it couldn't shift a little bit as we continue to go through the process. So I think that does it for our formal presentation. Any questions that we can answer for you today?
Well, actually, I think you covered it well.
Okay, all right. Well, I would imagine that we will or may not come back to see you again, depending on where this route goes. But if you want information from us at any time, we want to make sure that you contact us. Our information's all on the website. We'd be happy to come back and speak with you anytime.
I got a couple of questions. We have heard a fair amount about solar and the fact that it takes up a lot of farmland. And also I see your footprint for each one of these is pretty substantial. What are you gonna do when you run into farmers that aren't willing to abide by it?
You want to ask a more specific question? We view eminent domain as a last resort, and we really try to work with landowners as much as we possibly can to obtain voluntary easements. We certainly encourage landowners to give us feedback, which will happen during these open houses, and landowners are welcome to send us comments at any time through the website. Those all get taken seriously, they all get documented and reviewed by our colleagues that are working on routing. And I guess that, I would just say that we try the best we can to work with landowners and try to work with them in a transparent way. But we are still have the responsibility to build this line to serve energy consumers, not only for the benefit of those in this area, but frankly Minnesota and the entire upper Midwest, because of the system that Heather showed you earlier, a network of transmission and schools, right?
And the other question would be, somewhere off of this line that doesn't go through Steele County now, is there a chance of basically a spur going north that might?
So with voltages like this, one of the reasons that we are interconnected to the, because I can't back up here, right? One of the reasons we're interconnected to the substations that we are, if I can go back to it. So you see that the major substations can go from Big Stone South in South Dakota, down to Brookings, Lakefield Junction, over Pleasant Valley. So those are currently large substations that have a lot of different voltages interconnected already. And so it would be really unlikely that there would be additional substations built to tap into this line at 765 kV. But the way the electric grid works is that these lines radiate out, and for example, in this area from both Pleasant Valley and Lakefield Junction to support local utilities, not only in terms of delivering power, but also by taking the renewable energy or any generation that's being, any electricity that's being generated in this area and getting that onto a interstate highway system of transmission, if you will. So it would certainly be possible over time that there would be additional lines coming out of Pleasant Valley. I know that there will be additional lines coming into and out of Lakefield Junction as well. And all of those serve the network. We're just not showing lower voltage levels on this particular map.
Because it just looks like the south central part of the state is eliminated from any of this up here.
It actually is really beneficial to the entire grid, including here in southern Minnesota, again, because of the way it's interconnected. And actually, we have realized we've kind of got a gap in how we're presenting this graphically. So we're working on a new graphic right now, probably with some animation to better show how this actually interconnects in to serve local areas. And so that's something that we'll be able to show you.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll be indirectly hooked up to like, the new wind farm going in Dodge County and the one in Steele County going in or not?
Well, I can't speak to specific installations, but in general terms,
Everybody's hooked up
everybody
down the
is,
line somehow.
they're all connected somehow. I know that, for example, when we spoke to another county commission, they were concerned about their local wind farm, how that connects to the system. And it doesn't connect directly, but in that case, it would go on a lower voltage line, a 69 kV or 115 or 161 to Lakefield Junction, then it becomes part of this whole network. So it's all interconnected, and that's how the grid works.
Any other questions? Appreciate your comment.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is enterprise lease vehicle follow-up.
Question. Is that open house gonna be different than the first open house with the
Good
information?
afternoon, Commissioners.
Will there be a
Yes.
virtual option?
Yes, there will be a virtual option. at the end of the
Enterprise,
thing.
further our discussion on
For
our
open house.
They're developing one.
strategy
There should
moving
be.
forward.
It'll be
There's
after
a
us,
partnership,
after the ones on the list.
um, self-managed approach or hybrid approach. Also, we'll kind of touch base on geotabs that we talked about last time. And then, I think Alex got just some, couple recommendations on a couple vehicles as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alex.
Perfect. Yeah, summed it up great there, Jake. Just some basic follow from our last conversation, I think really revolved around efficiency and making sure there's not too many vehicles that aren't getting used, both with the county and the sheriff. Going to jump into this a little bit later, but overall, you know, the biggest thing I see is the sheriff's definitely driving the mileage required to kind of keep that consistent rotation. Definitely some aspects for consolidation or efficiency within the county. And really overall too, kind of comparing it with the info you guys got from Goodhue County and their self-managed approach, kind of rolling that into the deck here too. So, biggest thing I wanted to make sure to emphasize as far as all decisions here, Steele County, the Sheriff's Office ultimately has final decision over vehicles. We at Enterprise will definitely provide our suggestions throughout the year, any ways to make things more efficient. But there was just, you know, some sort of word from the Goodhue County discussions as far as when we met with them thinking that if they were to partner with us, it was our way or the highway, pardon the horrible pun. But that is not the case. You know, ultimately, county is in control over all decisions. We want to act as your advisor and just provide you with those flexible options, whether it's gonna be purchasing something for cash upfront or doing that standard lease procedure. So looking at if you guys manage things internally, you know, Goodhue County, their specific fleet manager is mentioned around the 20 hours per week that they're spending on fleet management. That's including, you know, acquisitions, resales, managing maintenance, making sure the vehicles are accounted for, being used, everything like that. Our program includes all of that, you know, maintenance decisions, sourcing, the right pricing, tracking of that through our online portal. These are all, you know, represent real-time administrative costs, so paying for that employee to handle everything on their own in their own portal. I kind of went into the industry averages in a fleet about your size, you know, 60 vehicles between the county and the sheriff. That's gonna average about that 15 to 25 hours a week, which lines up well with Goodhue County. So bottom line question is that work is there to manage the fleet. It's just how you want to whether outsource or handle direct payment to an employee within for all of that.
So I think, just to piggyback on that, the sheriff, they kind of take care of your own maintenance and everything, right? It's not part of this 15 to 20 hours a week.
No, we take care of our own.
Yep. So that would be less than?
For, as far as the sheriff managing their own maintenance,
Right.
then yes, there would be some of that taken out of it. You know, there's, in finding the industry averages, obviously average doing a lot of work there as far as how much time and effort, you know, people with the same amount of vehicles are doing. I think the biggest thing, you know, is providing our, you know, due diligence as far as pricing and making sure everything's abiding by government regulations there. And then that kind of just centralized tracking, not necessarily day-to-day maintenance for the sheriff, but having that platform for everything to be housed in the same portal for the county and the sheriff too.
And then with the sheriff, that's a dedicated vehicle as opposed to it being in a fleet system where it's getting a reservation system where, 10 different people are driving it. So, I'm not gonna look at the oil change mileage, and, Alec might jump in, not care to look at it, whereas the sheriff or deputy is gonna be watching when it's due for oil change.
Right.
Mr.
Well,
Chair.
I said that these numbers are based on the whole fleet, including sheriff, and that's what I just wanted to make. Yes, Jim?
That was gonna be my question. So the 15 to 25 hours, 20 hours, is that based on the sheriff's inventory plus, or the 30-some vehicals? 33 vehicles at the sheriff and the 23 here?
Correct.
Okay, so you're anticipating 15 to 25 hours for all of it, okay.
And then, and granted, not as much, usage with, or no usage with as far as the maintenance tracking for the sheriffs, but we're still ensuring we're getting those at the government pricing, abiding by due diligence, there, and then, the administrative of acquiring, sourcing, the resale, that aspect too, is something that we take on instead of, having a specific county employee handle that.
Thank you.
And so like I said, we are, we're providing the platform, we are verifying the due diligence, the pricing, all of that, but then really in addition to that is the advocacy as the industry expert here. And so, what we're using as far as our suggestions, for the county is basing off our entire rental fleet of vehicles, a couple million vehicles across the country, and then the almost 500,000 vehicles on lease we have through government entities and commercial customers like that too. So, just an example, Jake and I were talking about a couple years ago, got a vehicle that was just a lemon, for lack of a better term, able to, go about handling that, getting it switched out for a vehicle and providing those options, versus, just you go to the dealership and, whether or not they would provide that same level, I can't say, but in my experience, once the dealership's got their cash in hand, they're not as willing to help out. Customer service is always gonna be number one for us. We don't have any sort of contracts as far as doing business with us, so I just really want to make sure I can show the value that we're providing here, as far as your vehicles. I'm gonna jump back to the telematics tracking in a little bit, but if we go to kind of that real decision, when we're balancing leasing versus self-managed, the real decision there is keeping a newer fleet and being able to have the cash flow to do that as far as a lease, or pay cash and then try to extend that vehicle life. Most fleets will have a little bit of both of those, and we're here to help with either of those, but that's where kind of want to get in the nitty gritty a little bit then as far as our suggestions. Before I jump into those, any questions? All right. So for the sheriff, like I started out here, brought back a little bit more consolidated fleet list, hopefully a little bit easier to read this time. But the main thing, just 1,000-foot view, is that annual odometer all the way on the right side. As you can see, for the sheriff vehicles, for the most part, on their police interceptors, running between 30,000 miles a year. That's requiring that kind of replacement of the vehicles every 3 to 4 years when it hits that 100,000 mile mark, which we find is the ideal point to replace those vehicles. The only exception there being the old 07 Ford van, and then 18202 and 18201, two of the minivans there, seeing that there could be, downsizing one. So one idea I have as far as 18202, 18201, they're doing about 8,000 miles a year combined. Can those two vehicles be trimmed down to one? You sell off one, get cash for the county right there, but still have the needs that you have. The 2007 Ford, understand it serves a very specific purpose, not necessarily something we'd suggest to replace right now, but maybe just run out, until the wheels fall off, for lack of a better term, because it's such a specialized vehicle. Any questions on the sheriff fleet? As far as the vehicle usage, again, just some suggestions here as far as efficiency, but think there's definitely some more room for that on the county side, the split vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was not prepared for any of this, but just commenting on the jail detention vehicles, you could have transports on opposite ends of the states. That's why you have vehicles do. It might not be efficient, but you do need the vehicle.
Yeah, and that's perfect, no, and why, you know, just suggesting our point. So then, in those specific situations, then that might be something where you guys need 2 vehicles at once. Might be best to own those outright, you know, run them longer than maybe 5 years, because they're only gonna be at, you know, 20,000 miles in 5 years or something like that. So, definitely wouldn't be something I'd suggest to replace right now. Obviously, cutting down 2 to 1, not gonna work from a pure, logistics aspect. But then those would be some where I certainly wouldn't be coming back in the future and saying, let's replace both of these, for brand new leases at the same time.
Open, what is that, you know, whatever name, open, 17 Explorer, that's just a spare.
Go under driveway.
Yeah, number 2 there.
I don't know. I'm just wondering, is that one that went to, that wouldn't be one that went to,
Went over to the county.
corrections and didn't get,
No, they're on the other sheet.
I know we moved the 2 Explorers, or 2
Interceptors.
Interceptors, thank you. So I think those were the only 2 that switched over recently, right?
2017 Ford Explorer, XLT 4-drive 4x4. It
Yeah,
doesn't have a driver.
Once again, I don't have that data
Okay.
in front, so the vehicles that you do have, you took the 2 to CCA,
Yeah, we've got those.
and then we have a spare, I wanna say that's probably the blue unmarked.
Yeah, we've got a
This is
spare
the blue
marked
one.
squad.
Okay,
that's probably, that's why.
and what's the other question then? Or is that-
Yeah, just the usage, it's just a spare.
That is the spare, that's our run around everything kind of vehicle, so.
So that's probably why it's listed as open, is the driver.
So the ones that are client to assign,
Yeah, those are new 2026 vehicles that are waiting to be outfit.
oh, gotcha. So that's why the equity's in red.
Correct, brand new vehicles, you know, wouldn't expect to replace them in the first 2 years as you're paying off that depreciation.
And then obviously, once they get outfitted, they get assigned, and then.
Ronnie keeps still driving in the skid. You got a couple.
Are you looking on the sheriff?
No, on the next page.
Oh, yeah. And there are no longer vehicles that are specifically assigned
Yeah,
to
they're not
departments.
really assigned anymore as far as the fleet, so.
We could, you know, relabel those as the,
Assessor those.
specific departments. I think that brings in, you know, rolls right into talking about the underutilized vehicles. Got them highlighted here again, just looking at the annual mileage. Just talking with Jake ahead of time here, you know, 2018 Ford Escape up top, you know, used mainly by the custodian, driving over to the highway office for a couple hours a day, coming back, not getting that many miles on it. But what we've been able to do recently was kind of shift that from instead of the middle of the day, him using it to the beginning, allows it to be used by any other department at the end of the day, which has been upping the mileage, but still not quite what we'd consider a full-time usage. And so, with that being said, you know, the further right sizing, I think, can really come from the Geotab telematics. The Geotab will tell us exactly when the vehicle's move, not just necessarily registered to be used by a specific department, but when it's really used, one of its most basic functions is fleet efficiency, and can tell us directly, you know, which vehicles are being used, whether that helps us split up by department, helps, you know, not assign vehicles to specific departments, but just have, you know, overall usage be even across all vehicles. And previously, having Geotab just directly through Geotab, was about $50 a month. If we go through the government pricing through us for that, it's $20 a month, for the device data plan, about half price what a commercial customer would pay. And so, you know, that would be a suggestion, I think, if we want to really tighten up the efficiency, get rid of any vehicles that aren't being used for their full benefit, being able to have that telematics tracking could be a big help.
Would it pay for itself?
There's, here's where I think it would pay for itself as far as, right now I see 5 vehicles being underutilized. If that ends up being the case and we can trim the fleet size, 3-4 vehicles maybe, you know, that's gonna be, you know, call it $500 a month for a lease payment on a basic vehicle. You know, that's $2,000 a month. You say if you truly don't need those vehicles. Or if it's one of those where even though they're underutilized, it's still needed because all the other vehicles are out at once, well then that confirms our idea, well let's just have you guys own that outright, not have to worry about any financing or anything like that, and just, again, run it till the wheels fall off.
Does Geotab, schedule maintenance or tell you maintenance?
So another big part of that is the mileage input. So the Geotab mileage will get the mileage reading directly from the vehicle. Currently with Agile Fleet, can be some human errors as far as that, so that's gonna, you know, go right through our system. It will trigger maintenance alerts then as soon as it's needed because we know we have that exact mileage.
And then it'll also push to Agile Fleet the correct mileage, which is where we have our maintenance module.
Do they work together then?
Yes, they would. So
Okay.
Geotab works with several different partners to.
All right, Renee?
Well, one, I would certainly support having better data to help inform a decision, but the other thing that the board will need to consider at some point is Mid Prairie currently uses 3 vehicles for Steele County operations, and so one of the questions we would have to look at is should we have a dedicated vehicle for human services? And I think what I'm learning is that yes, we're probably gonna want a dedicated vehicle for human services, whether it be car seats or whatever reason it's gonna be used. But is it 1, is it 2, is it 3, we just don't know. And pulling those vehicles out of our fleet could obviously affect this analysis. So before any final decisions are made by the board, we definitely need to also take a look at how those vehicles could potentially be used for human services. Geotab data will help us. And I think ultimately, whether we own certain vehicles outright, because they're low miles, but it's still worth us having them versus leasing, is still yet to be decided.
It was also brought up, I asked at the Public Works meeting that it sounds like they can do some maintenance on the vehicles out of the shop there. Am I right in saying that, Ron?
Yep.
Yep. So I don't know, we gotta figure out how we work that and.
Is Geotab the only software that's out there, or do we have other options? Because I think Dave had mentioned a different
Yeah,
provider at one.
Samsara was one that we had been in communication with. They're about $14. That includes data as well as the device. There's no upfront charge.
And is that compatible with our, what's our software? Agile?
That I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Because there's a benefit to that, obviously, or?
Yeah, obviously, so, just one example is, somebody might go drive 10 miles and they'll put in X, they'll put you think they gotta put the tenths in, and the system doesn't recognize tenths, so then all of a sudden they think they drove 1,001 miles. Well, so that starts throwing everything.
Everything's
The cost of Tiffany cleaning up all those kinds of mistakes is pretty incredible.
Right, so if we have a different software provider or somebody that can provide that, that'd be worth asking if it communicates with our geotab. If we can save even $5 a month per vehicle, it's money saved.
And it's also a data gateway, which means that in certain applications, such as highway or something, where you might care to also receive information about materials being deployed, laid up, laid down on the snow, those kinds of things, all that's capable, through that gateway.
Good information.
Yeah, I can say Geotab would provide all, the software across telematics is pretty comparable. As far as the data it provides, Geotab is our partner, and that would allow us those mileage readings to flow to our system as well as Agile. If you were to go to Samsara, again, nothing we can do to prevent that, but we wouldn't get those mileage readings directly into our system, which would be a big goal as far as being able to provide.
So you can get your geotab pricing down to the $14 a vehicle.
That would be a question I'd have to bring up to Geotab for sure.
All right.
And the only thing with that is, there's a caution that if it's another program we're gonna have to look at, it just creates more work for staff, obviously, but just all things to consider.
So I think,
Geotab is more work for staff?
No, I do out with like something that didn't
Oh,
work with Agile,
Gotcha.
work with Enterprise.
okay. That makes sense.
and yeah, that's a little bit of some of our blind spot right now as far as the Agile and the reservations, and we got an idea of, who's using it the most, and, I think in the last couple of months done a better job at kind of nailing down just blanket reservations and whatnot that aren't being used. But having those direct mileage and exact usage times through Geotab that would flow to us would really allow us to think exactly vehicle A, B, and C are never used at the same time. Let's see if there's room for efficiency there.
How does Enterprise bill us, or how do they, obviously they make money, how do you make your money on that?
That's a great question. The biggest point is, or the way we make our money is off of volume. It's very small amounts off of, so interest, if there's an interest payment at 6%, let's call it, normally we're being able to get that for call it 5.5. So there's a slight gauge there. What I can say though, as far as government entities, that profit center is not there as much as with our commercial customers through our Sourcewell agreement with that. So there's a little bit of a profit on the interest in the financing, and so that's another reason why if there's an underutilized vehicle, there's no point for you guys to finance that. The other way is ordering it direct from the manufacturer. We just get a small slice of what dealerships would call upfront money. If I'm ABC Chrysler, and I sell a vehicle, gotta pay back Chrysler, but then there's a small sliver that the dealership gets to keep, called holdback or upfront money like that. There's a small amount of that we will keep as far as when the vehicle's ordered.
Well, as far as going through the fleet and the maintenance, there's nothing there, or is there more there than, or not?
As far as like us managing the maintenance for you, so the pass-through maintenance as far as when, vehicle goes in to get an oil change, we make sure that our team makes sure the vendor's charging accurate pricing for y'all, and we pass through that maintenance for you. It's a $5 a month charge, per vehicle, just to kind of have that oversight on the vehicles. But as far as you guys getting maintenance, we're not, billing you $80 for a $70 oil change. That all is just completely for you. And like I said, with the volume game, our goal is to just help manage as many vehicles as possible. Not trying to turn a profit on each vehicle, but be able to stay in business and help as many people as we can.
Thank you.
Do we have any issues with local vendors not wanting to serve these vehicles because of the pricing structure, or is everybody agreeable with the?
Yes, so, as far as I know, everybody's agreeable. We've only had one local vendor that we kind of struggled with. But a lot of our stuff goes to Ford. Just I know the sheriff goes kind of some other places, but since we get our vehicles, they kind of pass through Ford. They do the warranty and stuff like that. Just for example, the other day, we had one of the 2018 trucks go in for brake work. Well, then they found bearings starting to go out, so they actually called Enterprise. Tell Enterprise, here's the price. They call me, tell me that they've checked the price, and it's, well, you know, below normal industry standards, so they kind of go through all that work, just make sure we're not getting gouged or something, not that we would, you know, but it's just the check there for.
Yeah, it's a control and oversight. In my experience, if there's vendors that do not like working it, it's normally because they like throwing on an extra filter or something like that. They know if it's just someone coming in for an oil change, they might not know what's needed on the vehicle or not. Our process is gonna make sure that the right repair happens at the right time for the right cost, you know, given OEM specifications.
So Alec, your other customers, other clients or municipalities that you work with, is the replacement schedule timing about the same as ours? Yeah, number one question, and the second question is, do they, if they're using, say, Toyotas or Hondas, does that change how they approach it?
Sure. So first question, as far as the replacement structure, or replacement schedule, yes, most will follow that 5-year, 100,000 mile mark. Normally for the municipalities, it's at the 5-year because they're not driving that many miles. And so, but again, to give you a half answer, it's gonna depend fleet by fleet as far as what those needs are. Kind of going back to the sheriff, might see 2 vehicles that are underutilized, but those are both needed at the exact same time sometimes. And then to, I'm sorry, second part of the question?
Hondas, Toyotas,
Hondas,
does it make a
Toyotas.
difference what vehicle we're?
Yeah, so the replacement time is not going to change much. The big difference there is gonna be what the resale value holds at. So a Toyota at 100,000 miles is gonna sell for more than a Ford at 100,000 miles, but the Toyota is probably a little bit more expensive throughout that time as well. So, for government entities, for sure, American made are gonna have that best, you know, state bid or source wall pricing for governments, which is really the suggestion we go with as far as that, well, you know, keeping the acquisition cost as low as possible.
Thanks. Any other questions for Alex and Jake? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, due to the lateness of the hour, we're proposing to take the highway update to our next work session. It should be your first meeting in June, if that's amenable to the full board.
That works for Ron and Jake, yeah. Yep. 5 minutes, 7 minutes, we'll be back at 5.
What's that mean? Who's gone?
I better update you.